Enabling a Better Tomorrow is a web-based learning program intended to help individuals better understand situations that they would like to deal with, how to develop approaches to dealing with those situations which actually address the situations and minimize unintended consequences that might result as a result of actually dealing with those situations. Now, our typical approach to solving problems tends to be we simply attack them. We want the situation to just go away. We want things to go back to the way they were. It's more often than not a brute force approach. We find someone to blame and just want things to go away rather than figuring out how to make it an opportunity to in fact ensure that in the resolution of that situation things actually become better than they were before, and we create something as opposed to expending lots of energy just to make something go away. Now, in terms of today's reality, what we find is more often than not, yesterday's solutions are in fact the result or the basis for today, the problems that we have to deal with today. It's the unintended consequences of our actions that result in problems that we're dealing with. And this typically has to do with the fact that cause and effect are separated by both distance and time, and we're not fully aware of the implications of the actions that we take. So this learning program is essentially a reality check. I mean, we pursue things with well-meaning intentions, though it is in fact the limits of our understanding that preclude us actually developing the solutions that we're looking for. We typically shoot ourselves in the foot based upon our own actions. We run into situations where the cure is worse than the disease. Things tend to get better before they get worse, but you know, we take these actions and things do begin to improve, but then they in fact get worse than they were. There are situations where you can in fact have your cake and eat it too, but not both at the same time. And the harder that you push on things, the harder that they push back. I mean, if you question that, try pushing on this for a while and see what happens. And the leverage points, the places where in the environment it is most appropriate to alter things that would change the situation are not really as obvious as we would like them to be. So we are the victims of us. Most of what's on this page came from our Laws of the Fifth Discipline, which came from Peter Senge's The Fifth Discipline, the Art and Practice of the Learning Organization. So what we deal with are unintended consequences. As sort of a follow-on to the aspects of reality, there are in fact numerous explicit examples where the ways that we have chosen to address situations have in fact made things worse than they were before, where anti-lock brakes in many instances promote more aggressive driving, where low tar cigarettes actually promote people to take in more carcinogens than they did before because they have to inhale more to get the same feeling or the same result from the cigarettes. Labor-saving devices don't create any more leisure time than we used to have. Building new roads simply increases traffic delays and pollution. The use of cheaper drugs, because it often precludes the use of more appropriate drugs, ends up pushing costs up, not down, because the drugs have to be taken for a longer period of time or taken and then substituted with more appropriate drugs. The paperless office is a myth with all of the continuing implementation or development of high-tech computer technology. The amount of paper that we use is not actually on the decline. The government's movement to pay farmers to allow land to lay fallow to regenerate doesn't actually, they spend an enormous amount of money, but it doesn't really result in any reduced acres planted because the farmers accept the money and then just go plow up some other plot of land. Our continuing efforts for flood control simply tend to lead to more severe floods when they happen. The war on drugs is a losing battle. It's completely unsuccessful. Our efforts to continue to suppress fires results in greater forest fires when they happen, and our ongoing use of pesticides promotes more resistant pests. So we're not winning, and it's simply because our approaches to dealing with situations are extremely myopic and short-sighted. Most of these examples came from a book entitled Business Dynamics by John Sterman from MIT. So, though, as we have researched it over the years, we have found that the way that things unfold, there is far more order to them than one might initially expect. So that if we set out to fix a problem, oftentimes the linear progress towards that solution goes well for a while, but then it slows over time. Or the fix that we implement creates a problem elsewhere. Or the fix, once applied, ends up overshooting the goal, and we have to expend effort to bring the situation back to the target that we were shooting for to begin with, or our efforts seem to cause things to oscillate back and forth endlessly, or we fix the problem, but in time the problem comes back over and over again because we're simply treating the symptoms as opposed to dealing with the problem itself, so that oftentimes the underlying cause is not being addressed. And there are also instances where in developing or applying those symptomatic solutions, we end up situations where we actually develop an addiction to the solution itself, so that even if the problem is taken care of, we still end up having an addiction that we now need to deal with. And oftentimes we run into situations where we set out to accomplish something, and because of the time it takes, we end up settling for less. In the other side of this, we often set out to promote growth, but that, in fact, the growth that we promote leads to decline elsewhere, or some partners who come together to promote growth become adversaries with each other, or the growth persists for a period of time but then slows, and it slows because there are limited resources shared by two or more parties that end up limiting the growth that we're trying to promote, or there is more than one limit that needs to be addressed, or the limit is in fact created because there is insufficient capacity to support that growth, and then there may in fact be a tendency to let that target slip, so that the initial target for growth that we set out to pursue is in fact no longer the target. We're willing to settle for less than we were initially. So throughout these sessions, we will pursue a better understanding of all of these dimensions. So while we have continued to say that or continued to learn that everything is connected, in any particular situation, everything is not actually relevant. Someplace I read this attempt at humor that said that one cannot solve every problem in the context of the entire universe unless, of course, your name is Carl Sagan. So regardless of what the situation is, if there is a situation that one determines that they want to address, they want to do something about, that's the understanding of that situation, or the situation itself, promotes the development of an understanding. The intent of that understanding is to, in fact, well, part of it is to realize that the situation is often complex and appears complicated, and cause and effect are separated by space and time. Dealing with those two components involved in developing the understanding is intended to lead to a strategy, and the purpose of the strategy is, when applied, to actually improve the situation that one felt they wanted to deal with to begin with. Though what is also appropriate is that strategy take into account that it realizes and endeavors to minimize the unintended consequences, because our understanding is that, for the most part, unintended consequences end up making the situation worse, or they in fact create new problems that we have to deal with in the future. So throughout the next however many segments of this web-based learning thread that will be presented for your digestion and comment, we will attempt to figure out specifically how to better understand the situation in a way that we can use that understanding to develop a strategy which will improve the situation, and specifically minimize unintended consequences so that it doesn't make the situation worse or create new problems. So I look forward to the future sessions with you. Bye.